So we're recording, and so for some of you who are familiar with us, Communication via Design has been working with amazing companies, organizations like yours, strategizing, building, and leveraging brands through print and digital solutions for 26 years now. Crazy to think. But yet we could have never imagined working with our clients through a time like this. So, we've learned a lot over these past 3 months, and we're talking to our clients where, we're actually working together to help figure things out together. And so that's pretty much how this creative coffee break came to be, is that we wanted to kind of take some of what we're hearing and what we're learning and just sort of extend it out and welcome you all into the conversation, and share with you some of what we're learning along the way, and I thought we could do that through a nice exchange. So to start, introductions. My name is CviaD, and I'm the principal and creative director here at Communication via Design, and I'm really thrilled to have my expert team who are so well versed in all aspects of strategy, marketing, and design. We have Brian Sanders, Amy LeBeau, and Gail Moraski. And I've had the longtime pleasure of working with these folks and collaborating and learning from them each and every day. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and why don't we start with Brian Sanders. We'll go around the room, and then love to have you guys jump in, and so we all get to know each other. So Brian.
Yeah, so some of you have worked with me before, but I'm the Director of Technology / Interactive here at CviaD, and I don't know, it's been way more than a decade now.
Yeah.
I was a senior principal software engineer for a long time, background in business and finance and MBA, and I've done a lot of work, especially with nonprofits. So hopefully that's where I can weigh in today and maybe answer some questions and talk about some of the stuff that's going on right now, because we're in very strange times. So it's, I think, helpful to get different perspectives.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy LeBeau. I'm an associate art director. I've been with CviaD for, I feel like three plus years at this point. So it's been a great run so far, working with some of you already in different capacities across those years. I have a background in a few different design agencies in the Boston area, primarily focusing on print and web design, user experience, branding, strategy, all of that sort of stuff. And excited to share sorry, there's a little bit of feedback there, so I got distracted. Excited to share what we've learned the past few months.
So hi, everybody. I'm Gail Moraski, and I've kind of divided my marketing career between consulting and agency work, as well as corporate marketing work. In the corporate world, I was primarily working in financial services and healthcare. In the consulting agency world, working with all shapes and sizes of organizations, for-profit, nonprofit, large, small, business to business, business to consumer, and right now primarily on the digital marketing side of things, because that's really where the demand is, particularly now with the pandemic. It's increased to an even greater degree, because some of the more traditional forms of media like broadcast and transit just aren't appropriate at this time. So I'm happy to be part of the team and helping with anybody's digital marketing needs.
Do you want me? Oh, I'll go next.
Sorry, I was muted, but I was actually saying, Christine, jump in.
My name's Christine Coffey. I'm Director of Marketing Communications for Catholic Charities of Boston. Just started that job in August. Prior to that, I was with an organization called Masco, which is in the Longwood medical area, for I think about 8 years. And Vicki and her team when I got on board at Masco, they were already in place. And so we did a number of projects together, including 2 brand new websites. I can't believe they didn't fire me 10 different times as a client because I was completely unruly and drove them mad. But they put up with me. And so I'm excited to be working with you guys again on an initial project for Catholic Charities and hopefully a much bigger project down the road. So, and thank you for doing this. It's a nice break. Jackie, you want to go next? You're muted. Go.
Yep. Hi, everybody. My name is Jackie Cunniffe. I am the marketing manager at Catholic Charities, so I work directly under Christine. I've just been there since December, though it feels much, much longer in a good way. And so we support all of the agency's marketing and communications needs, both from kind of an internal perspective and supporting all the different programs. But prior to joining Catholic Charities, I have a background primarily in public relations, but also have some kind of general marketing experience from the corporate world, being in-house marketing, and then also on the agency side.
I'll go next. My name is Lauren Palazzola. I am the communications, marketing communications coordinator at Catholic Charities. So I work with Christine and Jackie. Previously, I have a little bit of nonprofit background. I worked for another nonprofit called the Northeast Arc, but this is my first communications job after graduating from Salem State. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be joining in this chat. Thanks for having it.
Maria, do you want to jump in?
Sure. My name is Maria DeGioia, and I've known Vicki probably 25 or 26 years, Vicki, since I started. I'm an art director, and I've known Vicki since my earlier days when I was doing a lot of freelance work. And right now, I'm the art director at the Center for Health Information and Analysis, which is a state agency that we're very involved with collecting the data for COVID right now. And a lot of our focus has been pushed in that area. But prior to that, a lot of my work was with various software companies and working in the design departments there. So working primarily on health and doing data analysis is something I've been focused on with CviaD. That's what we call ourselves for the past 5 years or so.
Thank you. Rachel?
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. I'm the web content manager at MGH IHP, which is the Institute of Health Professions. So it's a graduate school that is under Mass General Hospital's umbrella. And I've been there since December. Also, it's a fairly new job for me. And prior to that, I worked at Signature Healthcare out of Brockton, doing public relations and web content management. And that's how I know Gail. She helped us with our whole website redesign. It's 5 years now ago, I think. And so we're kind of looking to do that now again, not a redesign, but an upgrade at MGH IHP. And of course, all the COVID stuff going on, there's a lot of different things that students need. And there's a lot of different audiences that look to the website for information. So just here to hear what you guys have to say.
Excellent. Great. Well, I did start a chat, and so anyone can feel free to upload any questions that they have along the way, or feel free to jump in and feel free to comment on somebody else's questions as well. There's no formal format here, really meant to be an open discussion. So I guess I'll start with Catholic Charities, because Christine did forward a couple questions. So I'll just get that started by posing her first question, which is, we're working with a very outdated website, awaiting the green light for a redesign. In the meantime, we need to stay current and fresh to attract donors and supporters as we navigate the next 6 months of COVID. What can we do in the short term to keep our website attractive and useful to prospective donors? So that's question number one, and that's a great question. I think that really, I think we can all relate to that. How do we?
Yeah, if you just pop on our website is CCAB.org, and Oh, it's awful. It's awful. I think it was done in '09 maybe. And I think we're running Drupal 7.
Oh my gosh, so are we.
Yeah,
We need to upgrade to 9. That's like one of the reasons for our
exactly
upgrade. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, just the organization of the website, it's very confusing. And I don't know what, like I said in the question, I don't know what we can do to refresh it or make it look a little bit more of this decade before we can do a complete wipeout and redesign. So we're trying. We try. Lauren works really hard. Jackie works really hard on the hero images that we have in the front, and you know, tweeting out links to stories. And we have seen the traffic go up, obviously during COVID, because of people looking for help. I'll just throw a quick figure out there. Since COVID, you know, hit here in Boston, the demand on our food pantries, the demand for food has gone up 500%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, any ideas, any thoughts?
Well, I might turn it right over to Brian. We did have a little discussion about this. So, so Brian, why don't you start with some of your ideas here?
Sure, and hopefully you guys can't hear too much background noise. My neighbor decided to cut down all their trees. Started about an hour ago. So if you hear chainsaws, I'm not being attacked by, you know, it's not a chainsaw massacre. It's just my neighbors. So yeah, I mean, a lot of folks are in the same position. There's sort of a holding pattern because of COVID, and nobody knows quite when projects will start. You know, larger projects. So, you know, what we see and what we're recommending is focus on what you can change right now, focus on what you can optimize. So looking at your existing website, you know, looking at the Catholic Charities website, for example, I know there's a few things that could probably be cleaned up in the interface. I think the mobile site has an issue with, I noticed on the search feature is kind of sliding over some other stuff. So there may be some technical changes that can be made, but really, you know, focusing on content. I understand you guys have some decent photography, so like this is an opportunity, especially if you've got people with some time to go through and really bring that content to the forefront and to really optimize the content. Look at your analytics, see what pages people are coming into, and really focus on those. So if you don't have the opportunity to kind of go through all of your content, really focus on the high traffic pages. For you guys, since there is this kind of, you know, this larger redesign that's going to happen at some point, if you have the resources now, you could start to pull that content together. As you know, Christine, that's a big job, and it usually takes a long time, and now's the perfect time to do it if you can. But if you don't have the resources, focus on those high traffic pages. So you've got those top 3-4 pages that people are coming into. Tighten up the copy on there. Get your best photography up there. So if you got something in the archives, put it up there. And then the other thing is think about small features that could maybe make more out of the traffic that is coming into the site. And I'll let Gail speak a little bit about how to get that traffic in. But one of the things that we've talked with clients about is, you know, generally everybody has those high traffic pages. If you look at your breakdown on Google Analytics, you got the top 3 or 4 that may constitute 90% of the traffic that comes to your site, in addition to the homepage, obviously. So one of the things that we've talked about is like dropping some calls to action asks right on that page, having so taking Drupal for example, having 2 or 3 blocks that you might be able to drop on there at the bottom of the content, so you don't lose the folks who read through and then they bounce, where you can make a pitch, where you can talk about your impact. I think for Catholic Charities, this is really an opportunity for you guys because, you know, I understand you guys there's been, you know, sort of conflation with the general Catholic Church and some of that stuff. Right now, you guys are in such a vital spot where you are fulfilling a boots on the ground type of role, and really filling in where there's not a lot of government help other than the stimulus checks. These families aren't getting a lot of help, and you guys are the ones who are there. So make sure that content is promoted. I know you have the blog, I know you have some news stories, but really bringing that to the forefront, because right now there's so much noise about COVID and people feel either they need help and they feel helpless, or they're in a good position right now and they're grateful about that, but they just don't know what to do. When they see what you guys are doing in local communities, I think there's an opportunity for them for you guys to make that ask and say, look at what we're doing. Look at the impact we're having. If you want to help, if you're in that role where you're grateful that you still have a job, but you want to do something, this is where you can have an outsized impact, because we're here, we're in the trenches, we're doing the work that no one else is really doing. That's what I think you should focus on. Kind of look at your high traffic pages, look at the places where you're active, and bring that to the forefront of your website. So instead of 3, 4, 5 clicks, it's right there on the pages that people are landing on.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Those are great ideas. It made me, our donation page actually does get a lot of traffic, but I believe right now there's just a graphic up there. So we could put a couple of, quick little stories around that donation page. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. One other quick point on that before I hand it off to Gail is we did notice your blog has a lot of graphical text on it. So I know that's tough from an SEO standpoint. That's you're missing an opportunity there from an SEO standpoint. So if you can at least turn that, just reformat that, use actual text, tighten up the copy a little bit. It looked like it was maybe copied from a newsletter or something, which was probably quick, just the idea to get it up there. But now might be the time to go back and clean that stuff up. So I'll throw it over to Gail.
Okay. Whoops. Okay, I just want to make sure I was unmuted. Thank you, Brian. And everything you said was spot on. I always say to people, you need to understand which are your the pages of your site that are getting the most traffic. And as he said, if you've got 3 pages that are really receiving the majority of traffic, it's really important to have those call outs on the pages. So you're causing people to visit other pages of your site through those call outs and causing what we call conversions. So whatever the desired activities are that you want someone to take on your site, whether it's signing up for an e-newsletter, making a donation, volunteering. So you really need to kind of identify what are those conversion activities you want happening, and how do I call those out earlier in a visitor's experience to the site, because they may not go past those top pages. So hopefully you guys have a Google Analytics account and you're comfortable using that. If you don't have a Google Search Console account, you may want to set one up and we can help you with that. But that also has a lot of rich data. It will really help you figure out what search terms Google is presenting your site for in search results, and then also which pages it's presenting. And that can also give you information on, from an organic search or Google search standpoint, what page are people entering your site on the most. And it's not always the home page, but in a lot of cases it is. So you want to make sure if it is a home page that you have those calls to action there. And as Brian pointed out, the other SEO piece that's really important right now, where you have so many great stories to tell, and I think that's how you're really going to move your engagement, your awareness, and even some of your donations, is by telling the stories of how you're impacting the community. Where you have those, if you can change right now in the blog, they're more of a piece of artwork than actual, I guess, website content or HTML language that Google is going to be able to index or crawl. You want to revise those, and then you can use your Google Search Console account to submit those for re-indexing, so that Google becomes aware of them right away, and you can start driving traffic to your site into those pages. So
that's great. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
One other point that you might want to consider in terms of promotion is there's a lot of noise right now, a lot of keyword buying going on. People are aware that folks are spending a lot of time online. That's where a lot of things have moved. We talked about this, but who's driving by billboards anymore? A lot of other types of media are just not getting the engagement because everyone's online. The hours online have jumped up. So there's a lot of competition for keywords. There's a lot of competition, especially for sort of generic, not donation funded keywords. You're going to be competing if you go out there and try and get them, whether it's a Google ad grant or whatever it is. You're going to be competing with everybody else right now on that. What you guys have as your strength is you're out there. Like, you have programs all the time. You've such a breadth of programs, and they're so direct and obvious. Their benefits, if you can just bring that up, and it's news. So think about what channels you could promote it through news. You can also, you can do some paid promotion through news channels as well, and just get those stories told, because they are really compelling stories, and it's a great way to cut through that chatter and get people to realize, like, if you want to have an impact right now in your community, this is how you can do it. You guys need it. The need is there. And also for folks who have a need, it's a great way that's another way that they find content. They're probably not going to go to Google necessarily and search food pantry, but they might see a story about it, or, you guys they see that, and then at the bottom there's information about how they can get in touch with you guys or when the next one is. So think about promoting through those kinds of more PR channels.
One thought I have as well is that, Christine, you mentioned information being hard to find, right? And that this can go for any of the folks on the call today, is looking at, okay, what are the goals? Who are we talking to? Who are we targeting right now? But also, are they able to find what they want, and is it relevant to what their needs are? And that can be done through user testing. So giving folks tasks, if it's a donor or a prospective student who's applying to the MGH program, whatever it might be, are they able to find that content easily? And then when they get there, are they getting what they need from that content? So that's another thing to think about if you're not able to really think about going in and changing all the CSS and the look and feel of things, structuring your site so that folks are getting what they need from it.
And that's a good point, Amy, because I think, I think oftentimes organizations feel they know what their audience wants, but when you actually go out and interview them across the board, because it's usually a wide range, that audience structure, we learn, we get very different insights. So it usually is that user testing does pay off in that regard. Maria, I get the sense that maybe your challenges are a little different.
Yeah, actually, there's certain, the question that was just proposed was similar, because our website is another one that's been up there, I think, since 2013. And we're very limited because the developer who the state had contracted to use it has made it so rigid in terms of what we can actually modify. But certain things are changing right now, I think, just because of the whole pandemic, because we are non-biased, we're non-partisan, and the goal of CHIA is just basically to put the data and the information out there, and our key stakeholders are the legislature, where it influences legislation, but we're not giving, it's non-biased information that we put out there. But it's also used by a lot of researchers, and other of our stakeholders are medical providers, including nursing homes and facilities. So there's a big issue right there right now, and health insurance agencies. But a lot of things that they're starting to report on now has evolved. So there's a lot of issues with the cost of health insurance and how it's becoming very unaffordable for people. And but also just with this whole COVID crisis right now, a lot of people in our agency have been very involved with the command center in the state, just pulling in medical resources, getting supplies out there. They're actually been involved in the whole tracking system. So like our agency's done a lot just to organize everything that's been going on to keep everybody safe. So we just had a big all hands meeting on Monday, and we did a presentation where everybody was showing everything that they had done since we've had more than 100 days working from home now. And everybody had stuff related to working with the command center in the state and all the work that's been done. So HR has talked to me about possibly taking that information to create onboarding materials to attract new talent. So that's actually very exciting for me. But it's also a message I think that would relate, like my issue is like, I'm always saying, well, other people should know what we do, like not just these people who are so into healthcare data, because the story does affect people's daily lives if you get into it.
Yes.
And my question is, how do you do that in a way that's not biased? You know, because we're looking at, you know, because you have to put some kind of emotion behind it. So I've been thinking about that, because a lot of what we do is with that, you know, the information graphics, there's no photography, stuff like that. So I'm just trying to think about how we can get these messages out, because they are so timely, but in a way that, you know, that doesn't have a look that is partisan or biased.
Well, so does any?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in just because while you're talking, I was thinking about another client of ours, the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, and they're sort of on the financial side of it, so they're providing a lot of research and assessments of different policies, especially for consumption by the legislature and by policymakers. The public is also an audience there, but it can be very wonkish. You can get in there, and once you get into the white papers and stuff, it's fairly technical. So folks who are kind of
try to avoid using.
Yeah, but it's similar. They have right now with COVID going on, sort of you're looking at it from the public health standpoint. They're looking at it from the economic standpoint, and the legislature is trying to make all these adjustments, and they got to think about what are all the unintended consequences of doing that. And so one thing that they struggled with, how do we promote our stories in a timely way? How do we make this accessible to lay people who come here? And some of the things that we encouraged them to do, and we were in a position, they were just basically, when COVID hit, we were in mid-project with them, so we were able to make some adjustments and kind of push some angles on the website that we're building for them. But really to kind of try and distill things down. People don't have a lot of time now, so you've got your constituents, you got the folks who are already in your industry who know this stuff and are going to want to go in depth. Then you've got the policymakers, you got a clear message that you want to send to them. And then you've got the public as well, and then the press as well. And the press is useful in trying to convey messages back to the public, especially. So just try and digest that as much for each of your constituents. And when you approach the content on the site, try and have more of a push model than sort of a self-serve model, where you're basically acting as a concierge. Who are you? Why are you here? That's the question. And then what do you need to know about this? So if we just did a study, or we just have this program, what are the key takeaways? Really just boil down maybe one thing. What's the most important thing that the public needs to know about this? And to try, talking about PR as well and going out through news channels, that's a great way to get traction right now, because there's a ton of COVID news, but a lot of it's just the same stuff over and over again, sort of regurgitated. So they are looking for new news right now. That's something that gets a lot of traction. Somebody who has an insight, something new, anything that kind of indicates which way we might be going on this thing. Is there a second wave coming back? What's happening? That kind of thing gets picked up, but the attention span is so short, and there's so much noise that it has to be really honed, the message for each of those constituencies, so that they can pick it up immediately and then re-syndicate that as well, and making sure that's out on your social channels as well, that it can be really simple for people to copy, to share, to promote. I think that's really important. And Mass Taxpayers Foundation has seen a lot of success with that. They had so much great content, but it was like buried, and people had to go dig into it. And now they're looking at it, much more like, how do we make sure that the people get the right information that they need to then go and re-syndicate it.
Okay.
One of the stories that we've sort of discovered in our agency, one of the things that we do is we run a bunch of different areas. So in Brockton, on the North Shore, in South Boston, in Jamaica Plain, ESOL classes, English as second language classes, and they all pivoted and went online. They're all on Zoom classes, but a couple things. There's been a spike in people interested in the ESOL because they have time to be at home and to do that. There's a really interesting angle to it, that we have women in shelters, women who are living in shelters that were never our clients before. now they are hyper focused because they're sheltering in place. They have access to a computer at the shelter. And one of the instructors told me yesterday, we have 4 of them in our classes now, and she said they are the 4 best students that she's ever had, because they are so focused on bettering themselves while they have this opportunity, this time to be safe and to be in a safe place and have services and to take classes. So BUR was actually interested in that story. So sometimes it's the digging, constantly bugging our program directors, like, what's going on? We got to find something good here. But then you get a nice gem like that you can get people interested in. So hopefully that's going to be the case.
I think one other thing. Oh, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to add one aspect of the question, which I don't think I addressed, we haven't talked about, was you talked about nonpartisan. How do you make this material? And I think some things that speak to that right away are numbers.
Yeah.
If you have numbers and data, I mean, in essence, as long as they're sourced and they're gathered in a scientific method, then they're nonpartisan by nature. And I think promoting that is important as well. And then human stories are, that's a great way to, if you have personal, stories about people who are actually being impacted, we find, and maybe, this is kind of more broadly, and I know for Catholic Charities as well, the human face on that, I think, takes away a lot of any kind of partisan sort of angle to things. People see that it's genuine and it's about a person, not a position. So that might be something to consider as well. Sorry, Amy.
That's okay. I was going to suggest to also not forget about, social media channels and either creating graphics if it's with stats or figures or that data, or it links to a story of a case study on your website. So don't forget about those other channels that can drive folks to your website.
Yeah, we are lucky because that's pretty much Lauren's full-time job is populating our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we actually have seen in just the time that Lauren's been here, we've had a 35% increase in followers,
Wow.
which has been great because it was just a sort of a dead space for the agency for a long time. But you're right, that does drive traffic when you put the link to the story, or when every Friday we put the number of pounds of food, that we've gone from. We surpassed the 1 million pound mark, and those can be compelling, and get the click-throughs that you want.
And it's a good way to target your different audiences, whether donors, those in need. So you can target those messages to those different types of stakeholders.
Great. Rachel, I understand that you may have to jump off the call a little early, so we do want to make sure we address any of your questions. Anything in particular that you might want to pose to the group?
I guess I saw in the chat talking about Drupal 7 to 9. We're kind of straddling that right now and trying to determine, I liked the idea that Brian was talking about focusing on your highly trafficked pages, because how much do you really do in 7 when everything is going to have to be transitioned to 9, and it's a huge undertaking. So I guess maybe that's one way to look at it, is the traffic pages. I mean, we have several different programs we're trying to get students to enroll in, so also focusing on those as well. I don't know if there's anything more that can be added about that.
Yeah.
I can talk about the migration. That's helpful a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody here their organization is on Drupal, but it tends to be the big two are Drupal and WordPress. But for Drupal, it's a little unusual. So a lot of folks are on 7. 7 was, pretty much the dominant version of Drupal for 6-7 years. 8 is out there. Newer websites we've done in 8. So then there's 9. 9 just came out. It was just released, I think, last month. And generally, the way these releases go is the core, that's what you're talking about with version 7, 8, 9, is the core content management system comes out. And then at some point, usually afterwards, you get support for the contributed plugins or modules. So typically a website will have the core, and then it will have 10, 15 modules that expand the functionality. So usually when a new version comes out, we will wait a while because there's not support yet for all the sort of peripheral functionality. In this case, what Drupal has done is they have announced an end of life for Drupal 7 and 8 in November 2021. And so this is very unusual that both versions would be going end of life at the same time. And after that point, as long as that date doesn't change, and it might, sometimes there's a little bit of pressure at the end and they give you 3 more months or something. What that means is the Drupal community and the official Drupal site and all of that will no longer support version 7 and 8. So they will not be releasing security updates. If there are vulnerabilities, they won't address them.
So I thought I had read, sorry, just to interrupt you, that maybe because of coronavirus, they're going to extend that out and still support it or something like for another year? Or have you heard that?
They might. At the end of the day, there's a guy, Dries, who basically is the Drupal guy. He basically will make the decision. I know they really want to move to Drupal 9. Their goal is to get everybody on Drupal 9.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognize that there's going to be a fair amount of pain in that. But I think it's like one of those, do you rip the Band-Aid off slow or do you rip it off fast? I wouldn't be surprised if the date of November 2021 slides. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it goes into 2022. It's not going to go into 2023. So the clock is definitely ticking, but we'll see what happens with Corona. This whole thing, this COVID thing, nobody really knows how long this is going to go on and how it's going to impact. So there could be some changes from that. The thing to keep in mind here is if you're on 7, you are going to have to upgrade. Unless if you don't upgrade, then basically your only avenue is to have like basically private support and not just hire developers. Like basically there's going to have to be a separate community that sort of supports the legacy system. And that's usually not where you want to be for any length of time. I mean, a few months is one thing, but you don't want to be there for a couple of years or, even a year. So Drupal 7 is going to have to be migrated. Drupal 8 is very close to Drupal 9. And the idea was if Drupal 8 if your site's been built the right way in Drupal 8 with forward compatibility in mind, then the migration to Drupal 9 should be pretty straightforward. That's the theory. Nobody's done it yet. So, but my understanding is if your developer took those precautions and kind of made sure that they built your Drupal 8 site in a way that's forward compatible, then it shouldn't be a huge deal to do that migration. Drupal 7, on the other hand, yeah, the templates are going to have to be reproduced. Different modules are probably going to have to be swapped out. And when you do that sort of migration, usually, unless you just did the site in Drupal 7, and that would have been, frankly, at this point, anyone doing Drupal 7 sites is being kind of negligent over the last year. We haven't done a Drupal 7 site in a number of years.
Right.
Unless you just did it, you're probably going to take the opportunity to do a redesign and stuff like that because the project is such a scope that you might as well just refresh the rest of it. You're not going to take an old design and put it out there. So it's you're looking at a project. It's probably not. Hopefully, it's not quite at the level of doing a completely new site, but it's a substantial migration. Now, the idea is now in Drupal 9, updates are going to be much easier, et cetera, et cetera. We'll see when it happens. I mean, that's the idea, and that's part of the architecture of Drupal 9 is supposed to make it easier to do that. But yeah, it's something that you should definitely, as an organization, when you're ready to do that migration, it should probably, you got to backdate out. So you got to think about when it would need to be done by if that November 2021 date doesn't change. Most websites you're looking at, really safely 6 to 9 months ahead of time to at least start to be safe.
Right.
And at that time, it's probably worth checking and seeing like, well, is Drupal still the best fit for us? We use Drupal a lot, and for certain sites, Drupal still is the right one, certain requirements. Or might WordPress or even Joomla or something else be something else to look at? It's an opportunity to look at that. I think for a lot of organizations, they chose Drupal for a set of reasons that probably still hold. So they're going to do that migration. But it is a weird deprecating 2 versions at the same time. I've never seen that before, and it's an awkward conversation to have with a lot of folks. I know, like when you're internally talking to people who are, signing off on these things are like, why do we have to deprecate that right now? But it is supposed to come with some payoff and some increased stability down the road. We always recommend, of course, having your site be current and applying security updates, because the environment out there right now is just, things get hacked way too quickly if your site isn't secure and if it's got open vulnerabilities. So we're telling our clients, to start thinking about it, and with everything, all the uncertainty, we're not going to start doing the migrations now, but certainly the start of 2021, we need to be looking seriously at that, and then we'll know hopefully if the date's going to move a little bit, they'll get a reprieve or not.
Yeah. Great,
Does that
thank
answer
you.
your question at all, or that was just kind of general background?
Yeah, no, that was good. Part of me thinks like, do we even need to go with Drupal? And then sometimes when you work with an agency, they have like a strength, so they try to like push you to that. But I don't know, maybe we'll take a look at even using, if we even want to use Drupal or not. I'm so new to the organization too. I can't really be like, why did you do this? Like, I need to get some more background on why they chose it in the first place.
We have this conversation, we go through this process. We have tried very hard to be agnostic. There are Drupal shops, there are WordPress shops,
yeah.
And for us, technology is there to serve a purpose. I'm not in love with any of these. They all have their warts. They all have their things that they do really well. Drupal has historically been sort of a Swiss Army knife. So if you're doing a more complex site, of course, WordPress came from a blogging background, but it's come a long way since then. But if you're doing, more complex stuff, if you're doing some integrations, if you're doing like multi-site setup, like Masco was doing multi-site, so they had to support multiple sites. Drupal's better at doing that, has better separation. For sites that don't need to do that, oftentimes WordPress has become a better solution. WordPress is generally easier to update, though WordPress is sort of the plug-in, it's called the plug and pray, kind of click the button and pray update. That generally works, but if it doesn't work, you're sort of in the same boat as you would be with Drupal, maybe worse, because you weren't planning to do sort of an offline update. So it really comes down to the requirements of the organization. I think you just have to look at everything, and things change, right? So whatever it was when you built the old website, you got to reassess and just say, do we still need this? Do we still need this? What does the landscape look like? What can we get? If we can get 95% of what we need off the shelf with something, we got to consider that very highly. And Drupal might wind up still being the winner. Drupal doesn't have the best PR. I think this whole thing could have been spun a little bit better, but they're not about spin. They're just about, very direct. So deprecating two versions at the same time is like, you wouldn't see Microsoft do that, but they also have more marketing people on staff.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I know one of the things we are looking at is doing multiple sites, like for our research arm or for the different schools. So that's a good tip.
Yeah, you might, especially if you have organizations that you're working with, you might be sharing a platform with. That's a big point of consideration. Like, do you have to support them? And are they using something already? Are they going to have to be migrated over as well?
Right. Cool.
Great.
Thank you.
Any more burning questions? We have about 10 minutes, so there's plenty of time.
Were there folks interested in Google, the Google ad grants? I know there was a question in the in the chat about that.
Yeah, I feel like before I got to Catholic Charities, the Library Center, which is in South Boston, I feel like they had a Google ad grant for their adult education programs, but I could be thinking of something different. But I would love to understand it a little bit more, sure.
This is Gail's territory.
So interestingly enough, I did some work for Catholic Charities. I would say maybe five and a half years ago now, and it was more on the fundraising side and also supporting the interpreter services that you offer. So it was definitely related to marketing those services, because I know they provide revenue for the services that you offer to your clients. And then also, like I said, on the fundraising side, it was really to drive traffic to your your annual holiday house tour and to sell those tickets. And at the time, the people that I was working with did not have access to a Google nonprofit ad grant. That doesn't mean somebody in your organization didn't have one. Somebody likely did. But we did run a Google Ads campaign that, you know, we had to pay for ourselves. We didn't have the grant. But in general, for people who don't know about it, the Google Nonprofit Ad Grant is a grant for nonprofits. You have to be a 501c3. You can't be a government agency. You can't be a school or a university, and you can't be a healthcare provider. But you could be an arm of a healthcare organization, or you know, even a college or university that has some kind of philanthropic mission. So they make exceptions, and so sometimes if you think you'll qualify, it's worth applying. What I'm hearing is that it might be easier now to apply than it had been in the past, and I don't know if that's related to the pandemic and Google Ads just wanting to make it easier for people to apply, or if they just change the procedures in general for 220. They fairly regularly change the procedures, so being simple to more complex, and it looks like they've made the procedure more simple. So if you don't have a grant, I think it's worth getting one. I mean, you basically get $10,000 of free monthly advertising. No one ever uses the $10,000. I've worked with a bunch of different clients on their grants. $10,000 is a huge advertising buy for search advertising. So you'll never even go through that 10,000 or anywhere close to it. But it's great to have that large monthly budget. And you can drive traffic to all different pages of your site. You can use it for all different purposes, whether you're trying to recruit volunteers, go after donations, promote certain services, both paid services or free services. So there's a real lot that you can do with it. So I always encourage any nonprofit I work with to at least apply and see if they get it, because it is free advertising. So
does the grant require some sort of documentation to get sent back to them? That
it's pretty simple, at least it used to be. The main requirements is that you have to sign up for a Google nonprofit account, because the ad grant resides in it. But if you have a Google nonprofit account, you know, you'll have easy access to the ads piece. And even the process for getting a Google nonprofit account is not that rigid, I don't think. You do have to provide your what do you call it, like your tax ID information and something. It might be a letter or something to indicate that you're a 501c3, but it's not a huge lift. The other new requirement the last couple of years is that you have to be a member, your organization has to be a member of TechSoup, which is also something you can easily become a member of. And TechSoup provides a lot of discounts and opportunities for nonprofits to purchase technology services. The reason you have to be a member of TechSoup is because they're affiliated with Google, and as part of applying for the nonprofit account and the ad grant, they'll give you a little token that you have to include in your application. But in general, I think it's become a lot simpler than it used to be, which is good news. I'm trying to find the details about it, but just based on a recent experience for a nonprofit, it looked like the process had really been streamlined.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And something to keep in mind with that ad grant, as Gail's saying, it seems as though it's gotten easier to apply to, is it's really lowered the bar for nonprofits advertising through Google, which is good, but it also means there's more competition for general keywords.
Right.
So, you know, you don't want to try and be targeting giving or something like that, because it's not really going to move the needle for your organization, and everybody's trying to get out there and get it. So that's the place where if you do get the grant, you know, think about how specifically you can target to your audiences, your constituents, and, you know, think about some other channels, because you can advertise. It's not just, I believe it's not just Google search. I think you can go through some of the other Google products as well. And news is a great way to distinguish yourself, because there's actual content behind it. You know, that model where you sort of buy general keywords, and somebody comes in a landing page and you pitch them without any kind of context, just doesn't get great results. So just keep in mind, a lot of folks out there now have a budget, so they're going out there and they're competing with for some of the same eyeballs.
Yeah, so Brian made an extremely good point. Like, as far as using a grant for fundraising, it is not easy. So you don't want to get a grant strictly for that purpose, because there's going to be so much competition to have your ad shown for terms related to that. So you really want to drive the traffic to your site for other purposes, and have people learn about your great services and the audiences you serve and all the benefits to the community, and have that be the reason they decide to make a donation on your site versus calling that out in an ad. Because we've tried that with different clients, Google ad grants, and it just doesn't work. Particularly during COVID-19, it's not working. So you want to think ahead of time. What other ways can you use the grant?
Yeah, and right now, for the next 6 months to a year, God knows how long, but the focus of the agency is really going to be on basic needs, which is food, shelter, personal item care, utilities, or rent payments, but mostly food insecurity and food security. So that would be something that would make sense for us, because if you push people to our food pantries, you can also encourage people to donate for the food pantries. Should be great.
Yeah, that would be a really good use of it for sure.
Yeah, and I would bet that there's far less competition to get placement on like Google News or anything. Sponsored news is fine if it's relevant, really, and what you guys have is eminently relevant. And I think it's going to hit your two audiences right there. It's going to hit the people who are looking to give. People are just grateful that they don't need the services but want to do something, and then those who need help. It's a great way to reach them in a way that's really relevant and outside of the normal kind of marketing noise.
So, yeah, in our little chat box, I just included a few takeaways as they were coming up. But a few things that we talked about were looking at your data, seeing what it's telling you, because that will drive what changes really should happen to the site versus making any assumptions. So definitely keep that in mind. And then, also content. Is your content working as hard as it can be? And that's both visually and verbally. So that's another key component. Storytelling is really, really powerful right now. So you all have amazing stories to tell. So bringing those to the forefront is highly recommended. And social media, so access to your social media and all of what that could be containing as well, and cross-referencing. It's a great way, it's a great tool. Again, this is all about connection right now. So, put effort into that, Lauren. It sounds like you're doing a great job, so keep going. And then, Google Ad Grants, if we can help or advise or assist in any way, that's what we're here for. And then user testing. So is this another thing that you could be thinking about to really make sure that, again, any assumptions are in fact the audiences that, that you're reaching, and that you're reaching them effectively, that you really understand what they're coming to the site for, what kind of experience they're hoping to have. So they're your best resource. And yeah, and we hope to continue this conversation. I hope it's been useful for all of you. We're happy to do it. It's just a great way also to hear from you and what's on your mind, because that gives us insights that we need as well. So very valuable. And so if there's anything we can continue to address with you, we're available offline and happy to continue the conversation.
Well, thank you so much. It was great to see everybody, and good things to think about, and appreciate it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, no, thank you. This was really helpful, and you guys have such a breadth of knowledge and information. It was great.
Well, we're happy to share it, and thank you for providing us with a little background and some insights too as to what your challenges are right now. Thank you.
And I think Vicki, you were going to mention at some point if you guys have any feedback, because we're looking at maybe doing this on a more regular basis. Anything you think worked, didn't work, anything you think we should be doing differently, let us know.
Yeah, please, we welcome all feedback. Again, as Brian mentioned, we're hoping to have a series of webinars in the fall where we could break this down further, because we understand that there's so much to talk about when it comes to branding and marketing and digital advertising and so forth. So we thought we'd actually break those down into specific topics and conduct them from week to week. So again, if that's of interest, and if you have any feedback in regards to that and how it could be even more valuable to you, we're all ears. Okay, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Nice to meet everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Everybody, take care.
Bye-bye.